Hello, hello, hello. Assalamu alaikum. Ji ayanu pakhair raghle ni hao chune shumme wash male. Ohio Gonzaimus Guten Morgen. Hi, hugs and hellos and a very amazing Khush Ahmadid to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside Maha Makhdoom and Shahzad Khan. We hope that everybody is perfect and are ready to kickstart their week with us. Hello Maha, how are you?
I was wondering for you, I was like, I want to say hello everyone, assalamu alaikum. I'm good, ready to start my week. I had a very relaxing weekend.
Well, that's great. I mean, I had a very adventurous sort of weekend because I went to Peshawar.
Okay.
And we all love that mutton karai which we get from the, I don't know what the place is, but I know the restaurant name and it is Charsi. So I don't know.
Place.
Yeah, Charsi Tikka. So, you know, when you go over there, it is obviously very yummy. So when we went over there, we had food. Then we were so tired and sleepy that we thought that we were going to sleep over here. So we stayed in Peshawar and then I got back yesterday. And that's it. So that's how my weekend was.
I've actually been to Peshawar once and I've driven through it twice. So it's an interesting place and definitely worth visiting if you haven't.
But now I think what we need to do is gather our energies and focus on our work. So let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started with the public service message. So public service message coming up. Maha, are you going to do the honors?
Let's take a look.
Let's take a look.
Okay guys, so our public service message is kind of linked to the show. As you know, Pakistanis are very charitable. They're a very charitable nation. They always get together if someone is in need or if there's some sort of emergency. So our message is that when you are donating to organizations or foundations or people who are working on certain issues within the society, make sure you do your research and make sure that the money that you're donating is reaching the people on the ground level, because at the end of the day, you know, the whole point of donating is for you to help someone.
Exactly, because half of the time we do get the sentiment that, you know, the organizations from within are not very transparent or, you know, the procedures are not very fair. So what happens is that, you know, they end up spending money on something else where the reason why you donated the money was something else as well. So please make sure that the organization you're donating into should be on the same page where you are and help the way they want to be.
Okay, great. So now that's linked to our show. We have a very important show. Today we've been joined by people who are fighting poverty across the world in countries like Pakistan, for example. They also do operate in England, and they are an international organization. And I think that we should just get the conversation started, because I actually, before I moved to Pakistan, I actually applied to work for them as well. And I never heard back, so it's really great. I've got the CEO.
They might feel jealous now, man.
Yeah. Okay, so now we've been joined by Mark Goldring. He is the Chief Executive of OXFAM. And besides us, hello, assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much for coming over. And besides Mr. Mark Goldring, we have been joined by Mr. Mohammed Kazal Bash, who's the country director of Oxfam Pakistan. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much. Very well.
Thank you very much for joining us. So let's get started with the conversation. So what is Oxfam, first of all?
We'll start with you, Mark.
Well, Oxfam started as a British organisation, actually 75 years ago this year, so it's just a little older than Pakistan. But it started during the Second World War to feed starving civilians. And that's crucial to what our mission still is. So starting as a British organisation, it's now a global organisation. Original headquarters in Britain, and we raise funds and we act to try and eradicate poverty and injustice. That starts by feeding people in need. And if we look at our history in Pakistan, much of our early work was about responding to disasters, and still is. Cyclones, floods, droughts. But we also do long-term development work, helping to end the causes of poverty, give people the chance to make a living, go to school, get good health care. And we do that across the world, including in Britain.
Okay, excellent. Okay, sir.
Mr. Kazal Bash. So we're here in Pakistan. Oxfam has been here since the birth of Pakistan then.
That's true. It has been, and we formally established our offices in 1973, and have been working all across the country and territories. And as Mark pointed out, I mean, our main focus was on humanitarian response. You know, Pakistan, unfortunately, is very prone to natural disasters, from earthquakes to floods. And Oxfam has played a leading role in coordination with the government itself We have very close relationships with the National Disaster Management Authority, NDMA, as well as all its provincial wings as well. But also working very closely with the UN and local organizations. And that's really one of the main attributes of Oxfam in Pakistan, that we work with local civil society groups. And most of the large, well-established Pakistani civil society groups obviously started from, one-room offices many, many years ago. And Oxfam played a key role in building their capacity and providing them not only with financial resources, but technical resources as they improved and built their portfolio. And that's really been one of the key strengths of Oxfam, that yes, we respond to humanitarian needs, but at the same time we also build the capacity of civil society organizations and government departments.
Okay, so that's amazing, and that's really important, especially in a country like Pakistan. But when you do go to a region, for example, like for example in Pakistan, how do you figure out that these are the local organizations or people that we should be working with, because they are really getting to the root of the issue? Mark, and then
please.
Yeah, certainly. One of the fundamental things that we work, as Mohammed said, is we try and work in partnership, but that means we have to do our homework. Just like you were describing and asking your viewers to do their homework, we have a team which is led by Mohammed Kazalbash here, a totally Pakistani team. They work around the country, they build relationships, they test, they look on the ground. So I've spent the last few days traveling with them, visiting organizations, and some of them they've had relationships with for 20 years. If those organizations weren't delivering for local people, we wouldn't still be working with them. So it's a combination of research, analysis, then it's joint planning, and then it's us supporting the implementation. But Oxfam as an international organization is not the right body to be implementing all this work. It's local organizations, but it's the strength of the partnership and the transparency that's really important.
Exactly, but then picking up on that, I think, Mr. Kazalbash, what we need to do is that we need to join hands with the provincial governments as well, or probably on the grassroots level. So how do you think they respond to when you go over there with all of that research that, okay, now this is what we want to do? How many times do you think that it gets implemented, and how many times do you think that it does not?
Well, I mean, it's quite a complicated approach. I mean, obviously, you can sit down and plan in as much detail as you can, but then there are extrinsic factors that take place and you need to quickly change your plans. I mean, the key thing about Oxfam is that, with our due diligence, because we go through a whole series of checks and balances with regards to the organization, their financial capabilities, their human resource capabilities, their governance capabilities, and because we don't want a father-son organizer, a father's chairman of the board, and the son is the chief executive.
You certainly don't look relatives, though.
we don't look like relatives, so that's fine. But at the same time, with the government institutions, again, we work with the various line departments, whether it is the education department, the agricultural extension department, the PDMA, the Provincial Disaster Management Authority, and with them, they then of course have their own contacts and linkage, so they bring them around the table. So we're all sitting together and talking about a mutually agreed issue, and then see what is the best way to go about addressing it. If it is building an embankment, for example, how do we go about building an embankment? What can we bring to the table? What can the government bring to the table? What can civil society bring to the table?
Okay, excellent.
But so, you're right, the relationship's not always straightforward. But let me give you an example. While you were enjoying fine food in Peshawar this weekend, we were in Sindh, and before we travelled to rural Sindh, we called on the Chief Minister, and we talked about our joint work. One of the things he was saying is, because of local organisations, because of agencies like, including Oxfam, they've implemented some really positive laws on women's rights, on violence, on early marriage. but they're struggling to implement them.
Yeah.
Right.
So the head of the government saying we're struggling to implement them, what can you do to help us?
Okay.
So our job now is to work on the social mobilization, on the support to the authorities to actually turn that into a reality.
Okay.
So it's not simply that we think that by doing one piece of work it's all over.
Yeah.
We have to go from one stage, and one stage might be lobbying the government to act, and that won't be Oxfam, that will be supporting local organisations.
Excellent.
Another example that we shared with the Chief Minister was a piece of research that of course shows that even though you've got the right rules and laws and policies about girls' education, girls aren't joining school or staying in school in sufficient numbers.
Right.
So we've helped the government set up a gender unit in the Ministry of Education
Excellent.
that says this is actually what the research is showing. If you don't do this and this at the same time, the girls won't stay. So that's where we can help the policy and the practice together.
Okay,
All right, amazing.
excellent.
But other than that, well, what I wanted to ask is that, you know, obviously when you work with provincial governments or probably the local governments or with the federal government, there are issues, there are challenges. So would you mind highlighting a few challenges which you face alongside the governments when you need their cooperation, and then from the side of the civil society as well?
Well, on the government side, I mean, one of the key challenges I and my organization personally face is that, you know, we would start having building a relationship with a particular official or a particular team, and then, you know, they get transferred.
Yeah.
And then a new team comes in, which may be equally competent or more competent, but then you have to start from ground zero as well. At the same time, you know, it's no big secret. I mean, there are certain provinces that are, you know, well advanced and well equipped and well financed, and, you know, for example, in the PDMA, for example, PDMA Punjab is a very sophisticated body, and they have very sophisticated officials working for them, who've gone through a variety of trainings, which we have worked with them on, and a number of other organizations. PDMA Balochistan, unfortunately, has a long way to come forward. So, so therefore, you know, you have to have that balance and flexibility to work with a variety of government officials from different walks of life. But at the end of the day, you see, the beauty of our work is that our goals are exactly the same. I mean, you would want to eradicate poverty just as much as we would want to eradicate poverty. You know, you talk to any government official, the Chief Minister of Punjab would want to eradicate poverty, as would the Chief Minister of Sindh, even though they come from different political parties. So that really is our key anchor, that our needs are exactly the same, and it's just the way of getting to that is what may change.
Okay, and what you've highlighted is something that's quite important, is the fact that different provinces are in different places. So, you know, certain areas of Punjab are a bit more advanced than certain areas of Sindh or Balochistan, as you mentioned. But as an organization, which, you know, with the sole, you know, one of the objectives is to eradicate poverty so that people have, you know, dignity, equality. In a country as diverse as Pakistan, where one place is ahead, one place is behind, how does the challenge change? Because it's probably becomes more challenging, or does it keep it, you know, what's happening?
What you're describing in Pakistan is true across the world.
Okay.
You know, no countries develop uniformly.
Yeah.
So Oxfam's job is to do a form of needs analysis. What and how can we respond?
Right.
Because you might find that Punjab is more advanced than Balochistan, but you'll still have pockets of deep poverty in the Punjab.
Of course.
So our job is to try and work out where we can operate. We mustn't pretend that we are a government. We can't operate everywhere, so we just have to make choices.
Okay.
And sometimes those choices are geared through history. If you have a strong partnership, it's working well, you're making a difference, you want to carry on. In other places, new needs arise or a disaster comes and we start with an emergency operation, and then we think it will be wrong to withdraw from that area, otherwise people will be vulnerable again. We try and carry on.
Okay,
so one of the things we say about Oxfam, many people know us as a disaster relief organisation.
Yeah.
Indeed, as I checked into my hotel in Islamabad, the attendant smiled at me and thanked me for coming, and he said, Oxfam came to my village 20 years ago when I was a boy.
Oh, amazing.
So we're known for that, but we actually pride ourselves on being there before the disaster, during the disaster, and after it, where that's appropriate.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but other than disasters, we have been mentioning that Oxfam is trying to eradicate poverty.
Yeah.
Let's just define poverty as well. How do we define poverty? What is poverty? Is it some certain below the line, for example, GDPs or what?
Yeah. If we define poverty only as economic poverty, we're missing really important issues.
Okay.
So Oxfam, of course, we look at the ability to feed yourself. Sometimes that comes from income, sometimes that comes from your own production, your own fishing. But we never only think about money. So we need to think about people's access to education, to health. We need to think about, are women getting the same benefits as men? We need to say, are people having a chance to have a voice in their own society? So a lot of the work that Oxfam does, and indeed that I've been seeing in my week in the country, isn't directly about producing more food or selling more goods. It's actually about women preventing violence. It's about women working with men to keep their children in school for longer. It's about ending early marriage. So those kinds of issues which are important for people's whole being, respect for the dignity of an individual, is the way we define poverty, and development is making progress against that, not just creating more income. So one of Oxfam's big campaigns globally at the moment is on inequality. Because if you say, well, it's just about GDP, a few people can capture it. So Oxfam's published a report at Davos last year that shows that the richest 8 people in the world, 8 men in the world, of course, have the same wealth as half the world's population. 8 men, half the world. Now, we can't conceive of that. That's 3.5 billion people. If prosperity means those 8 people get richer, then that's not development. So we can't only look at wealth, we have to look at distribution. And things like education and health, social services, welfare, all play a big part in that distribution and redistribution.
So what you're doing is that you're not feeding the people with fish, you're telling them how to fish, basically.
Actually, I'd go further, because if you tell people how to fish, that assumes they can get to the water bodies. That assumes that they can actually sell their fish afterwards. That assumes that the landlord isn't taking half their catch. So we actually have to look at who controls fishing, and that's why Oxfam prides itself on tackling the causes of poverty. You might need fish, you might need to be able to fish, but you also need to control access to the water, the ability to sell your fish, and indeed what share do women get and what share do men get of those fish.
And that's amazing. And on that note, we're going to go for a short break, but when you come back, we're going to continue talking about the role that Oxfam is playing and the different projects that they're currently working on within Pakistan. Stay tuned.
Good morning.
Okay, that's excellent.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for everybody who just got tuned into PTV while you watch your world this morning alongside Muhammad Maktoum and Shazad Khan. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by two amazing people from OXFAM, which is an organization trying to alleviate poverty within the world as well, and then obviously coming up with some other projects which builds your capacity. So we have been joined by Mark Goldring, and then we have been joined by Mr. Muhammad Kazalbash. And now, before going towards the break, I asked you that you're not giving people the fish to eat, but in fact you're teaching them, and then you said further interventions where you make sure that the balance is created, not only one person is going to get the fish or get to fish as well. So now when you try to create such a balance, there are chances that you end up controlling the situations or you create a hegemony as well. So how do we first of all do it in Pakistan? How do we create this balance and then all over the world?
Well, in Pakistan, as we work primarily...
Because we are so in love with ruling and
of course
being there in the position.
Protocols and privilege.
And you're absolutely right, and that's why we have a whole series of checks and balances, not only internal to the organization, but also externally. We are part of large networks, and we also make sure that our partners don't get caught up in this whole power game, and making sure that they keep true to their initial thoughts and their initial views and vision and mission, and where they are to uplift everybody and not just themselves or their village or their clan or their community, but looking at it from a holistic picture. From an organizational perspective, of course, we have our own governance structure that will ensure that our recruitment, our financial systems are open, are fair, are transparent. We are audited regularly. I mean, once a year in Pakistan, we're audited by the government itself. Right. We're audited, of course, externally for each and every project. We're audited globally also by our own internal auditing system, which just don't look at the financial side of the picture, but they also look at the programmatic side. They look at the partnerships, who we're partnering with, what is their governance structure, what is their relationship with the community. So we've got, I mean, it's not a perfect system, but we try to cover as much of these issues as we possibly can. Excellent. And when we see that something has gone astray, we immediately then rectify it.
Okay,
so what do? Do you fire people then, or?
Well, depending on the.
Or have you set some examples of such sort?
Well, I mean, we look at some organizations where their governance structure is not at par to what we originally had sat down and designed with them.
Yeah.
Okay. We gave them a timeline of, say, like in 3 years, you need to change your governance structure. I mean, we understand that as a small local organization, you start with your friends and family, but over the time period, you need to change your board, get new people on board, get independent people on board, and most of them, if not all of them, end up doing that because we support them and build their capacity. Those that are unable to move or do that transition are then, asked to, we then further
so
try
then
to
you
help
step
them.
back, or what do you do then?
Yeah, we step back, or we try to then minimize our interaction with them until such time when they have reformed and are at level that we are comfortable with.
Okay, so there's accountability for everything. That's excellent. So now that's within Pakistan. What about across the world? Because as you mentioned, I think in the break or during the show, 70 or 80 countries. So that's a lot of people working for you. And you still didn't give me a call back, but it's fine. I'm talking about Asia. I'm going to keep throwing it in again.
The way we work has got to be different in every country. In Pakistan, you have a strong functioning government, but you also have a lot of vested interests.
Okay.
So it's really important that our team here are planning their projects so they benefit the poorest people.
Okay.
So this weekend, we visited an embankment in rural Sindh near Badin, and the local planners had actually worked with the farmers and the fishermen to make sure this embankment was going to benefit them. Okay. It wasn't just going to benefit one or two landlords. It had been a joint piece of planning that had taken a long time before it was built, and now it's benefiting the whole community. Okay. So that's the kind of approach that we try. In some other countries, government is not so strong. We have to find other people to work with, and they might be religious groups, not on religious issues, but they're still the social workers in many societies. They can be civil groups, they can be other local non-government organisations, or indeed local government bodies. But we have to adjust what we do. In every case, our job is to make sure that this activity is going to benefit the poorest and weakest groups. So you need thriving business for a country to grow. But you also need to look at who's going to benefit. And if Oxfam can play a role to try and ensure that maybe the least educated people get the training so they can benefit from that business, or that business can support activities in the neighbourhood, we're doing a valuable job.
Okay, excellent. And now I'd like to move on to you, sir, about the projects that you guys are currently working on within Pakistan to fight this, to alleviate poverty. So what are the different projects you guys are working on at the moment which are worth people taking note of?
Sure. Thank you for that. I mean, our projects mainly fall into three broad categories. One is what we started discussing on is humanitarian response. And we're currently providing support to displaced communities in Tank, for example. In addition to that, we are also implementing programs around what we call gender justice, which is looking at the rights of women and girl child, ending violence against women, addressing issues that on early childhood marriages, providing livelihood opportunities and trainings to women, both rural and urban women, on how to improve their livelihoods. We're also looking at trying to provide women with an atmosphere and an environment where they can raise their voice and get involved in political decision making, but politics with a small p, not a capital P, so that they can see how important it is to raise their voice and how important it is to cast their vote and to make sure that their vote is given to those people who will be addressing their issues and not the issues of the tribe or the clan or the Bradri. The third area that we're looking at is mostly to do with governance and looking at, you know, on, for example, we're running a project on the rice value chain. So trying to make sure that the rice production, from planting to getting to the supermarket shelf, that it's fair and equitable. The very point Mark was raising, that the initial farmer or the sharecropper gets a fair and equitable deal as compared to when it goes onto the supermarket shelf of a...
That must be difficult here.
Well, I mean, nothing is easy. I mean, if things were easy, then, you know, there wouldn't be a need for an organization.
Do you plan to do this about the sugar as well? Because I think quite a lot of cartelization goes on into the sugar industry.
Well, I mean, we're testing it out.
I'm very sorry to say that.
No.
I can be in problem for this.
Don't say that.
Yeah. Verbal disclaimer.
We're working on the rice value chain. We're seeing, and in coordination with local organizations, including the academic institutions. We've got University of Agriculture, Faisalabad involved. We've got the Rice Research Institute and Muridke involved with us to try and see how best to cover this issue from A to Z. And depending on the success of this, we can of course then expand it, or at least have a blueprint available for others to take forward on whether it's sugar or citrus or cooking oil or whatever, and take it forward.
To actually get this point, moving on to Mr. Mark Goldring over here. Now, what happens is that, you know, whenever we talk about, you know, breaking these cartelizations, so what happens is that obviously we have to be in contact with so many other people, and then there are political influences as well, and then there are pressures. How do you deal that globally?
Well, because Oxfam doesn't just want to run lots of small projects, we want to change some of the systems that give people a chance to make a good living. Us working globally is really important. And if I look at some of Oxfam's successes across the world, it's been where we've worked with a whole range of different groups, especially where there's multinational activity involved. And I'll give you two very different examples. One is around garments industry. Now, one company can't simply start paying its workers more.
Yep.
It will put itself out of business.
Yeah.
But if the group of garments factories, and the best example we have is from Cambodia, if they actually are talking to government about minimum wages, that they're concerned that the minimum wages are too low, the addition to the price when these things get to the markets in New York or London is actually very small. So by working in a group, we can build a sense of it's not right that people are suffering to produce our clothes. And we can even use our global networks to have consumers put pressure on in Britain or in the USA or in France, because many of the goods are being exported there.
Okay.
The other example is the tea industry, looking in Malawi in Africa, where tea pickers get a terrible deal, you know, they, as in many parts of the world. One company on their own will struggle to address this, but getting them all to work together is the kind of catalytic approach that Oxfam as a global organisation can play. And given how much of the tea is traded on the world market, we can use pressure on world leaders, which is something we pride ourselves on, to exert. So while I'm here, my colleagues are assembling alongside the UN General Assembly in New York.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking to world leaders about some of these kinds of issues, whether it be the war in Myanmar or whether it be trade issues.
Okay.
And so it's that kind of dialogue at the global level as well as the local level. But as you and Mohammed have said, we have to be careful that we're not into sort of union meets business relations in one company, but we're looking more broadly at the systems. And where I think Oxfam's been successful is helping shape discussions rather than us having all the answers.
Okay, that's
Okay,
great.
that's
Now, one more thing, and that is that, you know, since we earlier talked about, you know, letting somebody to fish other than, you know, giving them a fish as well. So this approach of Oxfam, I think, is very unique as well, in terms of not giving people or providing them with money or cash, but to making it possible for them that pretty much they can do whatever anybody else can do. Now, to achieve such an approach, obviously, I know that, you know, we're doing it in the later half of the show, but let's get to the mission and vision too as well of Oxfam, and then how do you organize or probably arrange so many other economical ventures when you're all around the globe, and then how do you justify that?
Yeah, that's my next question about the funding.
Yeah.
Fine. Well, Oxfam started as a British organisation. And we raised funds and we basically sent food for people. This is going back 75 years. We're now much more of a global network with Oxfams around the world running their own operations, supported by, in my case, the UK. We raise money from around the world. So just to take Britain as an example, 500,000 people every month make a small regular donation to Oxfam. Another 500,000 people go into our shops and they either give us goods that we can sell or they buy goods from us. That means we're a movement of people and we have a responsibility to those people to use that money wisely. But then we also need to explain, you know, as we were doing in the villages of Sindh this week, to the people to who we're supporting, that this money is hard earned by taxi drivers and office workers and labourers, and as well as business people across the world. So we need to use it wisely and we need to use it to make the biggest difference. And that's why, as Mohammed said, we then publish our accounts, our reports, how much do we spend on management, how much do we spend on fundraising, and also if we get something wrong, we actually publish it. We publish a report every year saying, we've been defrauded in this area, or we've had to sack these people, because it's important that we're transparent, and none of us believe the world is perfect or we can get everything right. So it's better that we're just open about that.
So the mission and the vision.
The mission is to end poverty and injustice. We know we can't do that on our own. So we then convert it into practice. What do we actually do? And that's where we say we work in partnership with local governments and local organisations on the things that are most pressing in the countries that we're working on. But as you rightly said at the beginning, that's not just about poverty meaning money, it's about poverty meaning the lack of education, the lack of a job, the lack of health, the lack of voice.
Okay, exactly, and we've touched upon all of this in the beginning as well. So now there's another argument. Now I'm just going to be those people who are watching who also donate as well. And my dad gives like £2 a month.
Yeah.
Like I remember when we were kids, we used to get the newsletter from Oxfam
Sure.
that this is where your money's going.
Yep.
If you could give more, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But there's this debate that the money isn't really like going to where it should be going. That's what a lot of organizations have, this problem that you donate, but actually it's going to another part of the world when you thought it would be going. I'll start with you, sir. Like, what do you think when people say that? And then when it comes to Oxfam, how do you kind of make peace when people are like, well, I gave my money for this crisis, but instead it went somewhere else? We'll start from the local and then we'll move on to the international.
Sure. I mean, all the money that we receive here in Pakistan comes from overseas. We do not fundraise in Pakistan. Right. We have an agreement with the government that we won't do that.
Okay.
So the money that comes in from either the British government or the people of Britain or from the Netherlands or from Australia is generally earmarked for a particular project. For example, the embankment that Mark was talking about in Badin, it was a project that was designed and, you know, X amount of euros were requested and they came in for that specific project.
Okay.
And if it was coming from the public were informed. There was a fundraising drive that an embankment needs to be built in Badin. This is the size of the embankment. This is how much it's going to cost. And please donate towards this. So that is then earmarked money. So it comes for a very specific purpose and a very specific location. It can also come for a specific theme. So I want to give money, you know, like your dad is giving money to Oxfam. Says, I mean, on a humanitarian response. And that could be globally. It could be in East Timor, it could be in Guatemala, it could be in Pakistan. Unless there is a specific appeal or the donor himself or herself says, Shahzad says, I want to give this £10 for projects in Pakistan on education only, then our system will endorse that, accept that, and the money that will come to Pakistan for an education system, and where we then report back on that. And we can't say, I mean, I don't have the discretion to say, okay, Shahzad's money's come in, but our education fund is full, you know, let's put it into some agricultural work. No, that will, we could go back to Shahzad and say, look, I mean, we need some help in the agriculture. Would you be willing to accept if we use your money in the agriculture? And if the donor agrees, great. If not, we then put it in education.
It's a very refined system.
Yeah.
It is. In some ways, it's too refined. Because you can't plan everything perfectly in advance. But it is really important that, as you said in your introductory message, people have confidence in the organisation. So for us, donations that say, Oxfam, we trust you, use this money where it's most needed, means that, you know, as the Rohingyas pour across the border, we don't have to wait for an appeal. We can actually have got money there to respond immediately. And we don't know where the next one is going to come. It could be responding in Haiti to Hurricane Irma. Or wherever comes next. So that kind of general donation is really valuable. But as Mohammed said, where there's an appeal that's specific, the rules are now very tight. And the auditing of that spend is very clear. So what we value is that of our hundreds of thousands of millions of supporters, some will make general donations and some will make specific. And if they make general, then they get examples of the work, but they're not being told it was spent in this place. But actually, we developed in Britain a new app, and that app allows people to track exactly what their money is being spent on. So you can download the app, you can give money literally with one press of a button. For example, after the hurricane or after the refugees crossed the most recent disasters, you can also track what £10 has been spent on. But that's, as you said, that can be very detailed, so we want to keep the right balance.
Wonderful.
So for somebody who's actually donating a pound probably, or even a rupee, don't you think it's going to cost the organization more in informing him?
That's right. It won't be telling him your pound went on this. It will be saying this amount went on this, or a pound bought this bucket.
All right.
You know, and of course it doesn't mean that their pound was traced through the banking system. We have enough trouble with the banking system without worrying about that. Because our work, actually, the banking system is a big challenge.
Yeah.
Because of all the counter-terrorism, money laundering, moving money around the world is difficult and complicated.
Yeah.
You add on all the restrictions of governments, so there's only so much tracking we can do. Let's be realistic.
No, but one more thing. How do you think that, you know, since 1973, since Oxfam has been here in Pakistan as well, that people have actually benefited from Oxfam?
Well, I mean, we have numerous examples. We have examples in Sindh, where people's lands have been reclaimed. In Dadu, for example, 63 acres of land was reclaimed after 1971. And now we have wheat and rice growing on that land. So it's made a huge difference to the people of Dadu. Similarly, we have examples in when the terrible earthquake of 2005 took place, the rehabilitation of their houses, the construction of basic services. So those have made tangible differences to people's lives. The setting up of the of various government institutions, you know, such as the gender unit in the education department in the Ministry of the government of Sindh, will reach out to people much beyond just the scale of the project initially. And we feel that this approach will continue, and supporting local organizations and building the capacity of Pakistani civil society will only result in development and prosperity in the country.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
I mean, at the end of my week in Pakistan, I'd been many times before, but this time just for a week. At the end of my week in Pakistan, I'm clear. We cannot claim Oxfam has delivered this across Pakistan because everything has been in partnership.
Yeah.
But we can say Oxfam's been a part of improved education, improved livelihoods, improved disaster protection, improved rights for women. We've played a part along with many others, but it has made a real difference, and we can see it.
Right,
Wonderful.
amazing. But what's your impression of Pakistan anyways, and how do you think that, you know, we are doing so far under the management of Mr. Qazilbash?
Well, I think there's a difference. I'm impressed with the Oxfam programme, certainly. I'm impressed that it's a totally national programme and that it's dynamic and it's really in good dialogue with a range of different organisations, and together they're doing good work. I first came to Pakistan in '88.
Wow.
And
I was 1 year old.
and I visited many times since. So what I see is, just to use the example of girls' education, you know, a massive change over 30 years. The number of girls starting school has probably quadrupled proportionately, I'm guessing. But you still have a real problem with girls dropping out. So there's a long way to go on that journey. You know, I see places that were villages now being busy towns, and I sit in the traffic jams along with everybody else, as you do in every other capital city and major city of the world now. So we've seen real progress, lots of big challenges remaining, especially on that issue of inequality and justice, and making sure that everybody benefits. So what Oxfam learnt most from, and I say it knowing that the UN General Assembly is just starting, from the Sustainable Development Goals, is that the commitment is to leave no one behind. And that's as important in Pakistan as it is anywhere else.
Amazing.
Wonderful. Thank you
you
so
very
much for being here. It's been an
Thank
absolute
you.
pleasure to have you on the show and discuss the role of Oxfam. And I've learned a lot today as well.
Yeah, same here, and I think
good.
that the systems are so refined that
I
you know, we
know.
probably need to get these
That's
systems
why I
over
didn't
here.
make it through, because they were like, no, research. I'm kidding. Anyway, but if you want any more information on how to connect with Oxfam, do log on to our Facebook fan page.
Which is with the name of World This Morning.
Our Twitter page.
World This Morning without a G.
Our Daily Motion and YouTube
World
page.
This Morning, World This Morning.
And the repeat is
5 past 11 p.m.
Have a wonderful day, a great start to the week, and we will see you bright and early tomorrow morning.
Till the next time, 1, 2, 3, good morning. Thank you.